And one, going live. Welcome to Indie and Unsigned, a presentation of Zagniff Productions, LLC. Broadcasting live from beautiful Zagniff Studios in the heart of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, it is time for this week's episode of Indie and Unsigned, where we bring you tales of the independent entertainer on their way to the big time. Remember who you're listening to today, because you may see them on the big screen or hear them on the radio tomorrow. Hosted by yours truly, the legend in his own mind, the man, the myth, the mad karaoke DJ, Mr. Fingers. And without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Indie and Unsigned. Hey gang, what's going on? Saturday. Welcome to another edition, Season 2, Episode 7, Indie and Unsigned. I am your host, Mr. Fingers D, mad karaoke DJ. Appreciate you joining us today. And today, joining us all the way from the great state of, I hope I get this right. Are you blue or green?
I actually don't watch sports.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, really.
Wow, that's a rare thing to find somebody. So no Lions, no Wolverines, no Spartans, no nothing, huh?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just go ahead from Go Big Blue State, because that's the one everybody roots for. And my friend from Muskegon would be very upset if I said Spartans or anything else like that. Joining us today, known as Boutique Paul. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good.
Good.
It's Saturday. It's sunny out. No more snow. So doing pretty good.
So you think, right?
Yeah.
Tucson, Arizona woke up to 13 degrees and ice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, it's a little bit frosty in the mornings here, but, it warms up really fast. I didn't know that they, were getting it cold out there that bad.
Yeah, neither did I. I mean, I've got some good friends that left the Virginia area and moved to Arizona, and yeah, they were like, "This is what we woke up to today. Like all the cacti and everything are just covered in ice." And they live right off of a slopey hill, so it's like, well, I guess they're not going anywhere today till the roads get salted.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a no-go.
Yeah. Well, so I appreciate you joining the show today, man. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, as an artist, I go by Boutique Paul, but my real name isn't actually Paul. My real name is James Bunn, spelled Bunn. I'm from Michigan. I was born in Grand Rapids, raised primarily in the Kentwood area. I currently live in the Grant area, which is about an hour north of where I used to be. And I'm a producer, multi-instrumentalist, podcaster also. I just try to do all sorts of creative things. I also try to dabble in filmmaking when I have the time, but it's a little bit expensive to do that for the most part. I don't really have much money to spend on a good camera rig or time to, sharpen up my editing skills. But yeah, just overall creative person is what I like to describe myself as.
Oh, okay, I've got a good friend that works in filmmaking. I might try and hook you up with if that's some serious interest of yours. Hey, Mr. Bolden, if you're watching, and not my cousin, the other Bolden, the one in Virginia. If you're watching, I got somebody I might need to link you up with. Yeah, he talked to me like he's always talking about gimbals and booms, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I have no idea. Just how
it's
do
like a foreign language.
Yeah, like how do I shoot it? Just like I got a camera, I take pictures and they move, and then we put them together. He's like, oh, you can do so much better if you do this and you zoom in for me. I'm like, man, look. So How did you get into? Was You mentioned you're a man of many talents? How did you get into the music scene and production? Like, what made you say one day, I think I want to do this?
So it goes back pretty far back to the early 2000s. I'd say around 2003, I want to say. My first foray into music, I was actually inspired by the movie 8 Mile starring Eminem to become a rapper.
Okay.
So, when I was younger, it's like, I'd write little rhymes here and there. And then eventually I thought, well, maybe I want to pick up DJing because, I was really into like, turntables type stuff. So I got a set of turntables, I was trying to practice scratching and doing all that stuff. And then once I got to high school, or I'd say like the end of middle school, early high school, I got a drum machine and a 4-track cassette recorder because I thought maybe I should learn how to make beats because I don't know anybody that knows how to make beats. I don't know where I would get beats. And, early 2000s internet really only has so many options for connected with people online conveniently. So I just thought, oh, okay, I'll pick this up. And then, over the years, I think when I was 16, I picked up bass guitar. I've always had a keyboard around since I was young, so I dabble in that. And then computer recording during high school. Post high school, I actually went to Grand Rapids Community College and was a part of the recording tech program. So I actually learned how to do legitimate, recording and engineering. I didn't graduate because I didn't take any of the general ed classes because I was like, yeah, I'll just take all the music classes and recording classes. And then I learned what I needed to. And yeah, it just sort of kind of expanded from there. As the years went by, I got more gear and learned more things. And, I only took it so seriously because it's like, I was still trying to navigate how to do it. And then, with the internet just kind of expanding in scope on the reach, I was trying to learn it, but at the same time, I didn't have anybody around me really or any mentors.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, it was kind of a rough road. And then just, the cycle of having, jobs and, personal life and all that. So, I think it was about 2019 where I kind of, everything sort of clicked in what I wanted to do. And it's when I decided to get on Instagram because I hadn't up until that point. I'm super late on it. So I got on there and I was seeing all the artists doing that there. And then at the same time, I was kind of had an idea for a multimedia project, actually two of them. And I wanted to come up with an alias for them because I didn't really have a set name yet. And then I just thought, okay, I need to come up with a name for it. And the projects were, I was originally going to do it was going to be a YouTube project, but I'm considering turning it into a podcast later down the road. It was going to be a show about breakbeats and the importance of that in hip hop and sample based culture. And
Oh,
each
nice.
episode would be about a different breakbeat. I go into the history, the artists, the musicians. And then I also wanted to do a project that had to do with my favorite album of all time. My favorite album of all time is Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys. And I was going to collect all the sample sources used or all the known sample sources used and try to recreate the album's beats myself to see if I
Okay.
could pull it off.
That's a
But
pretty that's a pretty big project to take on for yourself right there. That's yeah.
yeah, I also shot myself in the foot and told myself I'm only going to do it if I sample it from vinyl. So I realized that was going to be expensive. I've got a few of the records, but I was like, all right, maybe I'll push that off. And then, I just thought, oh, okay, maybe I'll just, become an instrumental artist because that's what I was seeing. It's, instrumental music is really popular now. So I was like, oh, okay, let me get involved in that.
Huge.
And I just see
Huge.
all these different artists. I'm like, man, okay, yeah, I definitely want to be in this space because it's easier than ever for the producer to be the highlight. So I was like, you know what? I'm one of the best things I do is make beats anyway. So I figured I might as well go for it. I mean, I don't have a terribly big following right now, but it's only the beginning. I'm staying positive and just trying to figure out different ways to expand my reach and build my audience.
Nice. You speak to a lot of things. I'm pretty sure when people are when they're listening and they're checking this out, that they will be able to identify. You know, I too I write and produce and put out music, and I remember going into the store and getting the 4 track and the drum machine and the microphone and buying the cassette tapes and then the DATs and now the digital audio works. It's man, like man, how am I gonna come up with $200 to buy cakewalk? That kind of.
Right.
I mean, you spoke to all of that, and I was gonna ask you about the name, but I mean, I picked up on it right away. But you, pow, right there, I was like, oh man, Beastie Boys. So you a huge Beastie Boys fan, or is it just that particular album that speaks
No,
to
I'm
you?
a big fan overall. It was just I needed to come up with a name for those projects that I mentioned, and I just thought, what could I be? And then I just thought, oh, I mean, one of the projects is based on that project, so I just sort of took the name, flipped it around, and I thought Boutique Paul. I was like, okay, that sounds kind of cool. So I went with it, and it didn't really get solidified for me until there's a podcast I listened to that was at the time when I started listening to it wasn't very deep into their series yet, and I interacted with them a lot and they started shouting me out, and when I heard them say it out loud I was like, okay, yeah, this is the name that I have to go by because it was just something about it that just seems striking. And you know I kind of later adapted another kind of inspiration for it. I try to take the Paul part of it seriously because I'm also a big Prince Paul fan. I think he's one
Okay.
of the greatest producers ever, so it's like, if I'm gonna use the name Paul I got to do it right because Prince Paul is one of the greats, so I can't disrespect his name, and that's his birth name. So
Oh man, like you're hitting, you're really hitting on a whole bunch of different. Now, Prince Paul. Now, to correct me if I'm, Prince Paul is one of the producers with the Beasties. Is that right?
No, he actually, well, he got started as the DJ for Stetsasonic, and then when he
Gotcha.
got really big, it was
Oh
when
God,
he produced De La Soul's first 3 albums.
my hip hop heads are really gonna run me over the cheese grater for that one. Because yeah, as soon as I said that, I was like, no, dummy. Rick Rubin did the first one. Rick Rubin did the first one.
The
Uh,
Dust Brothers did Paul's Boutique.
right, right. So now, okay, for those of you watching, I'm not turning in my music education card just yet. Y'all gotta let me have one. I'm getting to the point where it's hard to keep all these facts and everything up here. So tell me about the development of we had an opportunity to let me back up. We met on a a Facebook group for podcasters and podcast promotion, and I had a chance to check out your track and loved it. Loved it. It's just that it was a perfect. It was one of those vibes where you just put it on and you just chill. You don't have to do anything. You could just be sitting out on the back porch chilling or in the car riding down the highway just chilling. As a matter of fact, that's what the video montage was. It was just, you said it was farmland somewhere near you or something like that?
Yeah, it was just well, part of the video was me walking just through the woods in my backyard, just little
Hmm.
clips of that, and then the rest of it is just, I was on a ride with somebody, brought the camera along, and just, took footage of the scenery. And it's funny, when I dropped Winter in Michigan, the day it dropped, the night before, we had a massive snowstorm happen.
Oh, wow.
I
So,
like to think that I wish I could, say that I planned that, but I didn't. I woke up the next day and I was like, whoa, what happened? Because we got inches. I had to call into work that day because I couldn't get out of my drive or drive on the roads. And I was like, man, maybe it was my song that did this. I know it isn't, but I was like, man, that's a really fun coincidence.
yeah, the
You know,
musical coincidences are an absolute awesome thing. And that was that to use a overused phrase, icing on the cake, as it were. So tell us about the development of Winter in Michigan. Like,
so Winter in Michigan started out as a small beat I made. There's an artist that I follow who goes by the name of Motion, and she put out this sample pack that is just, all sorts of different keyboard loops and samples. And I took one of them and I kind of chopped it up, and those chords that you hear kind of chopped up and kind of bouncing in the beginning, and it loops throughout. That's what it started as, and then I just added the drums, added bass, and added the synth line that plays at the end, and it was just a loop. And then the minute I had posted it, she asked if she could share it on her page with a lot of the some other ones that she liked of people using her sample pack. And then I remember I had messaged her, or she messaged me. She said that she would have this on repeat if I had released it. So I thought, you know what, maybe I should just put it out. And then I just kind of like fleshed it out over the next couple weeks, and I thought, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna have to put this out. So yeah, it just really kind of grew as something just fun I did using someone else's sound in a sample pack, and then it just kind of grew to be something more. And then I added the turntable scratches and a couple different sound effects here and there, fleshed it out a bit more. Obviously did a bit more with the mixing and mastering and effects. And yeah, it just sort of, it kind of just happened organically. It was just something I just thought would be cool and fun, and I thought, maybe I'll put this out. And then I just thought, okay, if I put this out, I'm gonna have to shoot a video for it. So then I just thought, okay, I'll just shoot random footage of the scenery. It's snowy and cold out here in Michigan, so that's why I named it Winter Michigan, because it had a winter vibe. And then I just thought it was fitting for the season.
now, have you gotten a lot of good feedback on that? Just besides from what you heard from Motion.
I've got anybody that I know who's heard it likes it. I
Oh,
haven't heard any bad reviews of it yet. I mean, I don't have that many listens on it yet as of right now, but anybody who's listened to it has had good things to say, so I'm pretty happy with that.
oh, present company included, because you were like, check out my track, and I was like, okay, bro, gotta have you on the show. So definitely. So you have more stuff in the works then to follow up as a follow up? Are you planning on potentially putting everything together in an EP or mixtape or a full album
Well,
of a full album of instrumentals?
I'm going to be releasing singles for now that aren't going to be on like a full project. I have another single in the works, which is actually a track that I made in 2013 that I put out a version of it last year on my Bandcamp page, but I took it down recently because I wanted to rework it. So I'm trying to make that as the next single, and I'm going to shoot a video for that as well.
Okay. All
But
right.
other than that, I'm probably going to be doing singles. I have a series of EPs that are going to be kind of a concept project, and then that will culminate into an album project that I'm going to be starting soon. But it's a fairly ambitious project with how I'm going to do it, so it's probably going to take a while. So that probably won't be out for a while. But yeah, I definitely have a lot more stuff in the works. It's just, working a day job and living an hour away from work doesn't really help. But yeah, I've got plenty of things in the works right now.
Okay, well, if you need somebody for a cameo in the video as a DJ introducing your next track, I'm willing to. I work free of charge. I won't even charge you. I won't
I'll
even
have to
charge
take you up on that.
I won't even charge you SAG scale.
Yeah, it's eventually going to culminate into an album. It's actually going to be a pretty ambitious. It like the idea I had is going to require a lot of work, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach it.
Okay. What are the biggest obstacles that you found right now, other than besides working and living an hour away from work? And I know that feeling where you currently we're working from home, so it's a little bit easier for me to do this. But when you have to get up in the morning and drive to work and put in all the time at work, and you have to come home and you get home and you got to spend family time, and then after everything's all said and done, it's like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, do I really even feel like it right now? Do I have the inspiration? So, what are some of those obstacles that you have run across in trying to put your project together?
I think it is primarily the time thing. It's also, when I get home, it's like, okay, first thing I do is like, I got to feed the cats because they've been, at home all day. They get home, they're all sitting around the bowls. You're like, okay, feed me. So I'm like, okay. And then depending on the day, I'll have more work or more time to work than I could because my wife works a different schedule than I do. And she has Tuesdays and Thursdays off, or not Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays off for the most part. So it's like generally on those days I'll hang out with her, but for the most part, if she's working, she's not, home until like maybe 9 or 10. So that's when I'll have time to work. But it also depends on what day it is, because Thursdays I record with one of my podcasts, which is the K Cut, which is a film related podcast. I record with them on Thursdays, and then on Sunday I record my other podcast, Prefer Not to Say, with one of my good friends and our roommate. So it's kind of just a balancing act.
Okay. Well, tell us. See, I'm learning more things as we go along. We had a chance to talk earlier this week, but I'm learning a little more things about you. So, we don't have to just talk about just the music itself, because this is all about all aspects of entertainment. So, tell me about let's start from the back end. Prefer Not to Say. Tell me about Prefer Not to Say. What that's all about.
Well, Prefer Not to Say is a podcast that started with, it's me and my friend Greg. We started it because after he had moved in with us, because we had a spare room and he needed a place to stay. So he was like, hey, do you guys still have a room for rent? I was like, yeah, sure. I don't mind living with you. This is one of my, really good friends from, the past decade. So I was like, yeah, sure.
You didn't make him sign a roommate contract like Sheldon did with Leonard, did you?
Oh, no. Nope. No contracts. No, he's a good guy. I trust him a lot more than I trust most people. So we're good in that department. But the way it came about was he had talked about possibly starting a podcast because people have always told him throughout his life that they like the sound of his voice. So I thought, okay, well, maybe we could, build you up a show. And then we were trying to figure out a concept because he knew he didn't want to just do it by himself. And then I thought, okay, are we going to have a co-host? Or are we going to have a guest week to week? So we're going through different people he might be a co-host with. And then we just kind of settled on me being the co-host, which I was like, okay, I mean, I'm recording it anyway. I've got the studio, so I might as well. And then we ended up, when we actually started, we had kind of talks of what we wanted to do with it. But when we actually started recording, we recorded 8 demos. We did one a week for 8 weeks just to record and get used to recording. And those haven't even come out yet. That was before we actually started the actual show. So we put in 2 months of show development. That's and the name Prefer Not to Say is actually kind of a joke. Well, it started as kind of a joke because we're both mixed race individuals. And you know how, there's documents that'll say, what's your race? And some of them will say other, or some will say Prefer Not to Say. So I thought it was like, oh, kind of like a tongue-in-cheek joke thing.
Got you.
And it kind of morphed into, it was kind of that, but then it kind of morphed into this thing where it's, we started tackling things that people just don't want to talk about or have like the right conversation about. Like there was one conversation we actually had about masculinity because, there's this whole debate on like, what's going on with masculinity nowadays, because there's this fight for traditional
It's
masculinity, but we're learning that there's a lot of that is actually really not good
yeah,
society wise.
it's toxic.
Yeah, so
Toxic
we
and
had an episode
toxic is
about
the
that.
buzzword when with regard to that. Yes.
Yeah, and then we also discussed various topics, like, we're very right now has been more of a theme of how people are valued in the workplace and just the working world, because the pandemic kind of revealed how companies value employees, and it just value doesn't actually exist. So we've been tackling a lot of that
Amen.
lately.
But there have been some companies that have also come through pretty big time for their employees as well.
Oh yeah, we're big fans of what's his name, Dan Price, or Gravity Payments. He's a guy who slashed his salary to give all his employees $70,000 a year, and he posted the results. He's like, yeah, home ownership skyrocketed, people having children skyrocketed, paying off debt skyrocketed, and he said no one else is doing this, and he's not even a part of, like, he's not even like
He's
billionaire
not
status.
Fortune 500, right? Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that. I just read about that the other day. That is incredible. I you make me feel bad. I almost came out of my mouth with Walmart because they gave their employees a bonus and gave them all raises. That just seems small potatoes in comparison to what this gentleman did. Um, I definitely like the concept behind this. Now, I got to go back to something you touched on a minute ago. You said you guys did 8 demo episodes, and me still being relatively new to the podcast game, even though I've done a couple in the past, I didn't realize that was even a thing. Like that's been big talk in all of the chat groups is got to make sure you film, you get a few demos, run a few demos and see how it sounds and take out what you want or keep what you want and take the other things and either take them out or tweak them or whatever. So what kind of work went into that, or did I just basically just lay it all out?
Well, the first four ended up being, we just wanted to record, just kind of get a lot of the silliness out of the way, just kind of like get used to the microphone, because neither of us had done a show like this before, and wanted to get Greg comfortable with the microphone because he'd never really been in front of a microphone, period. So it was just just having general conversations, just topics of the day or stuff we saw online. But we recorded, I think the first episode, or the first demo episode, was 110 minutes or something like that.
Oh boy.
We just hit record. There was one microphone in the center of the room, and it was a really small room at the place we were at, because we had, we were actually living in Jenison, Michigan at the time,
Okay.
before we moved up here, and the room was tiny. So we did that for 4 weeks, but at the end of those 4 weeks, I ended up buying 2 new microphones, and I had also made an intro, break, and outro music. And then from
Right.
there, we solidified an hour runtime.
Okay.
So the second batch of it was it was a bit cleaner. We had the music with it, so it actually sounded like a real show. And then at the end of that, we ended up recording the brand new episode, like the actual release episodes, which back in those days we actually were ahead by we were recorded a week and a half in advance from a release date.
Okay.
Which ended up changing. And then it started as one episode a week, but then once the pandemic hit, we actually both got laid off for a bit. I was only gone for 4 weeks. He was actually off for like 8 months or something like that before he started working again. Because his employer was they had an interesting setup. I was just told, like, you can't come back yet until we can get the green lights and bring you back. So during then, we actually started what I called the Corona Bonus Pandemic Cast Quarantine Special, and it was an episode. It was an extra episode every week. So we'd kind of record during the week. It's like, oh, here's like a bonus episode, because there are people who had asked us to start recording more. And it's funny because when we were recording episode 14, and this was the day before the announcement was made here in Michigan that we were locking down. And we were talking about in the beginning, like, yeah, it's so crazy that this whole coronavirus thing, our friends are getting laid off and business is shutting down. The next day went into work, both of us were told not to come back.
Jeez.
That we were being laid off. And it was interesting. And
yeah, I'm at the 1 year work from home mark myself. As a matter of fact, a year ago today, was my last regular day in office. Now we have rotations at work now where every 5 weeks we go in, and then when you go in that week, you only do 4 hours in office, and then you come home and do your other 4 hours at home. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it's crazy to think that it's been like this for a year, isn't it, man?
That's we're actually approaching the year mark for our shutdown. Our shutdown when we started getting restrictions was March 23rd of last year, if I'm remembering correctly. So we're approaching a year of that for us here in this state.
Yeah,
And it's just,
I'm starting to see all the memories. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm starting to see all the memories pop up on social media. It's like, yep, 1 year ago, we were told, we're now at the 1 year, 2 week anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
yeah, it's kind of crazy how it's been that long.
And how quickly it went by.
Yeah.
Like, there are things that happened last year that I'm thinking, didn't that just happen yesterday? So that's been a big thing. Now, what about to get back into the podcasting, and we'll get back into your music in just a bit. To get back to the podcasting, do you find that it has become difficult? That it's difficult to find. Oops, that it's difficult to find an audience. In that, one of the things that several things happened during the pandemic, besides people losing their jobs and getting all the unemployment and everything. E-commerce went through the roof. Jeff Bezos is now probably a whisper away from becoming a trillionaire. And people took up hobbies. That was the biggest thing. All of a sudden, everybody was baking banana bread, and they were crafting, and they were do-it-yourselfers at home with the Home Depot record sales, all of that stuff. And ironically, what we're doing right now, podcasting, like the number of podcasts in the last 12 months have increased exponentially all across the globe. So do you find that it's difficult to find a core audience, or have you kind of caught on already and you've got some regular listeners and viewers or things like that?
We have regular listeners that are friends of ours for the most part. Due to us being busy, especially both of us being back to work again now, it's a little hard to promote, but we're a pretty general podcast. And the time we usually get a lot of listeners is when we have a guest on. So it's like we for the first, few interviews, we just brought in friends who did things because one of the goals of the podcast was to be a platform for, to help other creators and give them a highlight. But the pandemic kind of changed that because we had several people, locally that we were going to try to get interviews with for our second quarter of the year. But then the pandemic happened and we're like, well, we're not going anywhere. And we didn't know how to do remote recording yet. But once we figured that out, I actually had a couple remote interviews with creators that, live outside of our area. But it's not really, yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is just the fact we're general. We're trying to get back into being a interview format. Like we're actually going to change to being primarily interview once certain things happen. Greg, my co-host, he's actually going to be moving soon, so we're trying to get him set up there and figure out a workflow remote wise. And then I'm going to start reaching out to people to do interviews because he actually has another venture he does. He actually does Twitch streaming, or did for a while, and then
Ironically,
he kind of had to stop doing that.
funny
But
you
yeah,
mention that we're live on Twitch right now as well.
and Twitch has become a really good platform for a lot of creators nowadays. But yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I think the whole podcasting blowing up, especially in pandemic, because people want to do something. It's not surprising, but it's also kind of crazy how many started. It's like two things happened. It's like we saw an influx of podcasters, and then like everybody started an OnlyFans, and it's just like everybody figured out, oh, the internet's here. I guess we have something to do.
Right.
And yeah,
OnlyFans. And actually, the thing that I've only recently started noticing is that there are a lot of people that are content creators that are also using OnlyFans. I mean, you know, everybody knows what OnlyFans primarily has been used for, but
but it's not the only thing.
it's not the only thing. Like, I was surprised to see several of the content creators that I follow. They're like, yes, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Twitch and blah 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 blah. And then boom, OnlyFans. It's like, wait a minute, what? You have an OnlyFans? I thought that was for. And then they're like, well, hey, look, it's a paid platform. People have to pay to see your premium content. So
Yeah, I think I ended up starting a second show the end of last year, which I think we're going to have a little bit of an easier time, which is my show, The K Cut, which is a film oriented podcast, and it's strictly film, which I do with my co-hosts Andreas and Rachel. And Andreas is actually the person who brought me on the show because it was him and his friend Rachel. They were going to originally do it, and he had told me he wanted to do a film podcast, and I was like, oh, I think I'd like to do something like that one day. And then he just talked with her and invited me on the show. I was like, oh, okay. And I actually met him online because he actually lives in Canada. He's actually friends with one of my friends. And he went to school. I think he has, if I remember correctly, he's got a master's in film and photography preservation and archiving.
Okay.
And he also runs a film website called Films Fatale, which he does, reviews, think pieces, master classes. And this is kind of an extension of that. And just every week we, talk film. We come up with a topic, and then each of us will discuss a film relating to the topic. Or we started what we call the cinematic smorgasbord, and we all make recommendations for each other. So it's like, okay, we recommend each other a film we haven't seen. And then with the second one, we actually split into two parts. We'd recommend each other films. And then during the second half of the episode, we talk about it. We all collectively watch a film we all haven't seen.
Okay.
So we all had our, I forgot what all of our individual picks were, but our first, collective pick was Shaft because no one had seen it. And we thought it'd be cool to watch that.
Wait. The original?
Yes, the original with Richard Roundtree. Yes, the original.
The original or the Sam Jackson remake? Okay. Well, I've got a question for you then. Now, I know this is only our second time talking, but just based on what you know from what you've seen from the little bit of time that we've talked and the little internet presence that you had, if you had to suggest a film for yours truly, what would you suggest?
Oh man, that's really hard. It's I watch so many different kinds of movies. It's really hard to pick just one. Honestly, one film that I suggested in the show, because at the end of the show we each make a film suggestion also, I would actually recommend to anybody. It's this film called Mona Lisa, and it stars this guy. He gets out of jail because he's kind of involved in the underground crime world, and he ends up driving this taxi for what he finds out is a sex worker. And it kind of has this, it almost has like if you see the movie Taxi Driver, it kind of operates in that framework, and he's just kind of like wrapped up in the situation, and it's kind of wild. But it's just an example of a good movie that I just recommend to anybody.
Is that anything like oh my god, what was the movie? Is it The Professional, or where Natalie Portman Natalie
I
Portman,
haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about. Where it's the assassin and he brings her up.
right? It's one of those things where you kind of sort of inadvertently get drawn into a situation that you don't have any control over, but you become vested in it over time. I love movies like that.
It's kind of like that. It's not as extreme as that, but it's it's a guy. He just kind of has to go back and work with these kind of people he worked with before, but he's trying to do right, and he's trying to help this person out of a situation they're in, and he gets wrapped up in this whole scheme. And it also stars a younger Michael Caine. And for those who don't know who Michael Caine is, or you've probably seen him before. He actually played Alfred in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
Oh, so I've been rocking with Michael Caine for a long time.
Yeah, and this is actually a movie from like the 80s, so it's like a much younger Michael Caine. And he actually you kind of find out that he plays a different kind of character. You kind of revealed to be kind of like a shady person, which is kind of like really unlike what we've seen recently. But yeah, no, it's just a really good film.
Michael Caine has always been the guy that just kind of quiet. I mean, in recent years, it's kind of the guy that's on the side of right, and he's not going to plant a flag and die on a hill for it, but he passes out this grandfatherly advice with that very distinguishable Michael Caine accent of his.
Yeah.
So to see him, I might check that one out for sure myself. I would. Now, I'll the next time we get our opportunity to talk, I'm just going to give you some categories, some things that I like. I'm definitely a comedies guy. Love to laugh. A comedies guy and an autobiographical guy. If it has anything to do with real events that took place, I'm definitely check those kind of things out.
We actually had an episode recently where we did films that weren't based strictly in true events, but they were inspired by true events.
Oh, so SVU.
Yeah, it's we actually each picked a film that is is kind of based on something that happened, but it doesn't like take everything. Like it kind of changes the story. Like one of the films was one of my co-hosts recommended Jaws, because Jaws is actually based on actual shark attacks in the early 1900s, or it's based on a book that is written about those shark attacks. Wow. And then my film is actually I didn't either. I was surprised. But my film was actually the Gus Van Sant film Elephant, and it is actually a movie about a school shooting that was inspired by the Columbine massacre, except it's done in a very artistic style, and it kind of replaces everything about it except for the setting and the fact that of the like situation taking place. So it's like, yeah, I'm actually really big into films that kind of like take things, not
Take historic
yeah,
events and give it a fictional spin.
yeah.
Okay. So, you know what? Right here is a good place for us to let people know. Those of you joining us today, thank you for tuning in to episode 7, season 2 of Indian Unsigned. I'm your host, Mr. Fingers, the Mad Karaoke DJ. I'm here today with Boutique Paul, joining us from Michigan, who I initially was going to bring on as an instrumentalist and a producer, and I find out is a man of many facets. Right now, we're talking about podcasting. We talked about prefer not the one podcast prefer not to say. Right now, we're talking about the K cut. So, what the K cut? Explain is. I know there's a meaning behind that title.
Yes, it's kind of a joke, like my other one. It's kind of like a joke. It's a play on words because there are two cuts known. There's the J cut and the L cut, and it has
Okay.
to do with dialogue spilling off into a scene. So let's say I think the J cut is where dialogue is heard, but that at the after the changeover to a scene, and I think the L cut is the inverse of that. So it's like it's in relation to how dialogue spills over to a scene. So they thought, what's in between the J and L cut? The K cut. So that's how they
Okay.
came up with it. And
Okay.
that show, we actually did demos for that as well. I think I was a part of 3 or 4 demos, and then those two did 2 of their own demos. So that was another one that got kind of demoed out to kind of get things worked out. And we actually record that remotely because both of them are in Canada and I'm here in Michigan. So,
Okay.
but they're in my time zone, so it all works out.
Nice. Yeah, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I think your boy probably needed to have shot some demos before we got started, but not today's episode. We've been doing good since, but the first few, I used to have a cup. I used to have my first foray into podcasting was back in 2008. We were kicking the idea around in 2008 or so, myself and a couple of friends. I was in the DJ scene, as my stage name indicates. I was a karaoke host. The other guy was a karaoke host. The other guy was a club DJ. We got together, got this thing going. And man, the amount of equipment that we needed to do this podcast. Each of us had a laptop. We had the Shure SM58s with the table stands and the pop screens. And then I had my whole rig with the board and the gates and the compressors and everything. And then I had this was before, well, webcams were a thing at that point, but I didn't have one, and I didn't really want to go and spend the money on them because they were a little more pricey than they are now. Like I said, that was $29. So I had was it not a super high 8, a DVC, the digital video cassette camera, and I went out and bought an adapter to hook it in the computer. It was like 3 trips up 3 flights of stairs because we recorded at my buddy's house, and we just got on and ran with it. And so many of our first episodes, we go back and listen to them. It's like, oh my god, what were we doing? So kudos to you guys for definitely doing the demos, because yeah, I don't never done one, but that's something that I will keep in mind should I ever get into another one there. So, have you had any most memorable moment so far in your podcasting? How long have you been podcasting actually?
I've been podcasting since the start of 2020. Well, before we started recording in 2019 and we launched in 2020. So
Gotcha.
I think we recorded the first couple episodes in December. But yeah, I've been doing it for just a little over a year now.
Okay. Any memorable moments specifically do you want to share with the folks?
I would say the most memorable one was episode 13, which I had made jokes about constantly up until the point, but I had bought this pack of all these Japanese Kit Kat flavors, and we invited a couple of Greg's friends on the show, and we tried all these flavors and made comments on them. And that was probably one of the best episodes we ever did, just because it was just really funny. And yeah, it was just all these wild flavors. I think the pack was like 72 different flavors or something like that.
Holy
We did
moly.
like 30 of them on the show.
That's crazy. It's and the thing is, a lot of people don't understand. If you've never been to Japan, I've never been to Japan, but I was stationed in Korea, so I kind of understand. You think of here in the United States, and you think, oh my God, they've got a flavor for everything. No, we don't even
No, we
scratch
don't.
the surface. Like, we have regular Coke. I think at one point we had cherry and vanilla Coke, and then you got Diet Coke and Coke Zero, and then you go to Japan and they've got cherry Coke and pomegranate Coke and squid Coke and sawgrass Coke, and like it's a machine with like it's like one of those. It's almost like you with the Kit Kat. Your example with the Kit Kat is like, remember the super drink machine. I don't even know if any of the places have them anymore, but you could go when you go in, you order,
Yeah,
and you
it's
can
just
get
a touch
it right.
screen, and you can pick whatever
You
flavor
can
you
pick
want.
whatever flavor. It's just like that in Japan. So we've got Kit Kat, and then they've got Kit Kat to the nth. They just take it and go to the nth power with it. So what kind of flavors were you guys eating, man?
Oh, there was all sorts of ones. We had different variations of strawberry. There was banana flavors. We had wasabi, green tea. There were just
Wait,
so many different
there's a
flavors.
wasabi flavored. Now, was it flavored or was it just the wasabi burn?
It didn't actually burn. It was, I think it was just like,
That's
it was kind of like a
disappointing.
synthetic flavoring
That's
for the most
disappointing.
part. It's, yeah, it was just, it was wild. There was, I think there was, we had a chestnut one also. There was a raspberry one. There was a peach one. Actually, no, I think the raspberry and peach ones I had off cam or off recording. Yeah, I can't remember all of them, but there was, yeah, I think we had like 32 or something different flavors just in the show that we
Mhm.
did. And I still have the other half of them just sitting in my refrigerator. Just
I got a
because,
challenge for you. I don't know if you imbibe or not, but if you drink, you need to do it. You need to revisit that and introduce alcohol and see how that
I
goes.
do not drink.
You don't.
I
You
do not.
wow. You don't drink and you don't watch sports.
Yes, I'm a very different individual compared to the average person.
I'm not giving you any flack whatsoever. Kudos to you. I myself am 6 years sober, but I love my sports. So wow. Okay. Well, we're gonna just throw that idea right right out the window.
We might revisit it. We've been discussing. You know, we eventually want to start a Patreon, so I have a bunch of different ideas for bonus content. So I'll definitely there's a chance that those might come back because we still have plenty of flavors of those. But we could try anything else. I have a bunch of different ideas for bonus content.
You've just given me an idea for my next show. I may have I may I'll have to find something universal that's universally sold with my guests because all of my guests are remote and have them we'll do a taste test. Actually, we were going to do the one chip challenge, but then on one of my other podcasts, but my co-host for medical reasons could not
Oh,
partake. So yeah, he's got his gut wasn't going to be able to take it. So we had to scrap that. And I'm actually was kind of phew for that because I was like, just drop that right in the trash. I've seen what people
I've
have
seen the
done.
videos of that. It does not look fun at all.
Yeah, because I would say a good 70% of the people that when they eat it, those first couple of bites, they're like, this is. But as it sets in, because it's a slow burn, and then it begins to get them on the backside. Like my probably my favorite is the one of Shaquille O'Neal eating one live. And,
Oh, I haven't seen that.
and he was eating one. He ate one live on. It was during the pregame show for NBA Tonight or whatever on ESPN or whatever. And, yeah, he wound up having to get up and take his coat off. He broke out in a sweat and wound up having to, hit men's room because it hit him pretty hard. Gosh, but that's a good idea. Well, not the one chip challenge. I'm definitely not coming back to that. So, any plans for branching out or merging the two, where you are outside of just doing themes and intros and things like that, but merging your production with your podcasting or anything of that nature?
Well, I did all the music for both podcasts. I'm toying with the idea of doing a show that's music related. I have a few different show ideas. I've wanted to do a music related one, but it's just a matter of having the time, and that's probably something when I'm a full time creator. But for the most part, it's just pretty much the music is pretty much just aside from doing like these small things for these shows, it's primarily just releasing my own music and then posting whatever I want on my social media pages.
Yeah, I feel you there, man. Because it's a tough. It's a just because in my case, I'm a one man show. Like everything is all me. I don't have any. I do have one podcast where I have a co-host, but everything is all me. Like I've got the whole production is right here, keyboards and everything are back over there. And it sometimes you go, oh man, this would be great if I really did, and you're like, that's just something else to add to the plate. So, and you don't think you've reached the tipping point yet? Are you doing pretty good on keeping the juggle, the balancing act going?
Yeah, it's just most of the things just the day job and the drive. I Everything else isn't really difficult if I plan it out correctly. Like with the podcast, like with the K cut, that's actually a lot more post produced than I did for Prefer Not to Say, because Prefer Not to Say is kind of designed to be more off the cuff and just there's very minimal editing. I'm doing a little bit more editing now, but with the K cut, I'm doing fine editing. Stutters and false starts and the filler work, going producing that kind of even shaping conversation at some points if we're overlapping a little bit too much. So that one, I was social media. It's like, okay, I got to make a video for Instagram or something like that, but it takes a little bit, because generally what I'll do is, for most of my videos, have been or a little bit more than that, because I actually have, so I could put visuals on it, so it's kind of a green screen, so I have to kind of do a little bit more editing with that. So I mean, those don't take setting up, getting everything ready, making it, editing the and it's, I don't really do much mixing of that, because they have their own algorithms on how it's compressed, so it's like it doesn't really matter how it sounds anyway. But trying to build a presence on these platforms. Instagram changed recently that kind of in the dust, because it's impossible to gain exposure.
What? How did they change the algorithms? I'm very new. I've had an Instagram, but until I launched, I've had an Instagram forever, barely used it. So until the last couple of months when I picked this back up, as when I've been using the Instagram. So how have they changed the algorithm?
How they prioritize interaction, sharing, or no, it's not sharing, it's saving. So to expand your reach, pretty much your best bet is having everybody save your post. It goes saves, shares, comments, and likes me. Boost you extremely. Then they changed it and made it a little bit more difficult, and now or not sharing, saving, or limit your reach, which it's already hard enough to get people to share something. It's easy to like something, but I tell everybody, look, share it, save it. That's better for the creative. And it's obviously just a ploy to get pay. The early days of Facebook, it wasn't a problem, but then they started paywalling everything, and it's like you're.
Wow, I haven't, I didn't even know there was a shave. Oh my goodness, subconscious much. Save function on the IG platform. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated now, and a lot of people don't like it. And they also changed the feed, where it used to be fairly chronological, and now it kind of operates like Facebook, where it's just all scrambled, and you might see a post from 2 days ago at the top of your feed, even though you don't want to see it.
Yeah, something you've
Twitter,
already.
I'm faring a bit better. I like Twitter a little bit more, because that doesn't really have problems, because it's not based on an algorithm. It's just it's
Well,
everybody sharing everything.
well, Facebook also owns IG, so there's
But
that.
that's the other thing.
Yeah, Facebook just recently, at least with the mobile app, has given us the ability to. There's a popular and a recents, so I pretty much keep my Facebook on my recents. Every time I log on, is click, I hit the recent, so I get the stuff that
Yeah,
was
that's what I do too.
posted. But I agree with you. It can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. It's almost like, hey, we want you to use our platform because using our platform gives us exposure, but we're gonna kind of handcuff you a little bit in how you make your money.
Yeah,
You can use our platform to monetize it, but we want you to do it a certain way. I'm not knocking
exactly.
it. I mean, I've paid for the ads and things like that. You might have seen one of my shoe ads floating around somewhere. But it gets to be a point. I, yeah, I guess that would be one of the things that we could put under the column of being the challenges of being a content creator, especially with podcasts. So, what have you had any luck at all with? Well, you said you've only been at it for a year. How do you see your plays and downloads and things like that? They going fairly well on the platforms. Are you using a share all? You using one share all platform, or are you taking the time to individually go to upload this to iTunes and upload this to Google Play and
Well,
upload?
we're on Podbean, so that we get the RSS feed, and I just have to go around and so there's some functionality in there where you can connect directly through their platforms. Like there's they have backdoor access to Spotify, so you can just click the link, submit to Spotify. But I have to you got to go to Apple and Stitcher like that individually because of how they operate. But it's all hosted on one platform, and it's just you take the RSS feed and put it to all the different ones. Like I think we're on multiple different platforms aside from Spotify and Apple too, because there so many options. But it's fairly easy. I can also track the stats. Every now and then we'll see things like people out of the country listening to them.
Mm.
I mean, we've got about on average maybe I say each episode now gets about maybe an average of 10 or so listens. I mean, we only can have so much time to really promote it and do a lot of work on it, but we
That's
were
a big
definitely getting a
difference.
lot more before pandemic because everyone was working. People listen to podcasts at work. So it wasn't uncommon for us to get 30 to 20 to 30 interview episode might get 50 or more within a week. But now it's kind of tapered down because we have dedicated people, but anybody who isn't really working right now just doesn't want to listen to podcasts because they're not at work.
I we here we're doing okay, but we've only been at it honestly. It hasn't been 2 months yet. My other podcast, fairly faithful following over the course of I think we've been at it 3, 4. This is year number. Nope, we're getting ready to kick into year number 5 now. So we've got a good dedicated group of people that follow the show and listen and download. But it's always been a question. The biggest question is for every podcaster, and you're on this a lot of the same forums that I am. How do we get more listeners? How do we get more downloads? And everybody seems to have the same opinion. They call it the race to 100. I think is it. What is it? Upload 100 uploads. So yeah, are you? You said you've been at it for a year and you do it weekly.
Yes, prefer not to say hasn't been as consistent because we just both of us are on different schedules and work's busy right now, so my brain's pretty fried, so it's kind of hard to get that out. But the other show, it's two people who I don't live with, so we have a set schedule, and they also have busy lives. So we're like, okay, we record at this time, and then I spend time editing it. So those are definitively weekly, but for the most part, both shows are weekly. When I'm consistent with prefer not to say, it's weekly, unless we have an off week, and then I might upload 1 or 2 episodes if we have a couple in the stash. But I mean, for the most part, these shows, like Prefer Not to Say, was always just kind of a platform to get started. And I think we'll build our audience better once we're able to, once we switch to the interview format. And then the K Cut is a little bit more of a niche show. So that'll probably get a bit more traction in a certain community because it's kind of an isolated topic. But I mean, all this is really just, sharpening my skills in all these areas, getting better at talking to a microphone, once I have interviews, getting better at that, how a show is composed. I mean, my editing skills have increased greatly over doing it. I think combined, there's 80 something episodes between both shows that I've done in the
Wow.
past
Very nice.
year. So, and
Um,
I'm doing all the post production myself. So,
how many times do you have to go in and edit the how many times you have to edit that out? It's almost gotten to a point where you can recognize the waveform for when somebody says and drags you drag it out. Do you get a lot of that?
I don't. I generally with the Keika, I edit along the way, so I'm listening as I'm editing, and I'm kind of like cutting and replaying. So it's a bit of a lengthy process, but I'm trying to do that to where I mean, it's obviously the more comfortable we get in the show, the less I have to do that. But it's mostly just I have to listen. I need to be on point with each second of it because it's designed to be nuanced. It's designed to be a little bit more pristine. Whereas my other show, it's just us having conversation.
Now, are either of these live, or do you just record them and put the episodes out?
I record them, do the post production, and then put them out. We don't do anything live yet because it's not as feasible to do that right now, given the type of room I'm in, and then having my co-hosts be over, across the border on the K Cut. So yeah, we just pretty much just keep it to audio for now. I mean, that may change, but
Okay.
I'm also waiting for when I become a full-time creator, I'll have the time to allot to actually invest into something like that. Because I'd love to do like a live thing, but it's just a lot of work than what I can do with what I have right now.
Yeah, the biggest reason I ask is because there's that I maybe that's why I think there's such a huge influx in podcasting because that has become more of the new normal. When when I saw people doing it before, actually when my crew when we were doing it before, we were kind of almost blazing a new trail, so to speak. You know, Facebook didn't have the ability to do lives, and none of us knew anything about links or anything like that. But now that's become more of the new normal. I see more people doing live casts and live streams as they do their podcasts to be, you know, if you were doing a live cast and you were kind of ahead of the game because everybody else was just recording theirs and putting theirs out for download and listen. And now everybody's kind of gotten on that level as well. So, you know, I see that, you know, you eventually you said you'd be getting around to doing that type of format. And it is, I'm not even gonna lie to you. It's difficult. It is, I will say this, it is it's sometimes it can be where you find yourself going, okay, you know, we gotta is this question going to lead into another question or having to dig back and find the question and find the content to get into to give yourself an hour's worth of viable content. So yeah, I definitely feel you there. Just a question, something to contemplate, something. Man, you know what, work wore me out this week and I think it just hit me. It's Saturday, I'm supposed to be
Yeah,
cool. It just
work for me was pretty brutal too.
You, ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed live on camera a circuit blowing. You ever seen when the lights go out your house and you got to go get the flashlight and trip the breaker? That just happened right here just now on Indian side. I appreciate you being patient with me, man. But yep. So I definitely like what you're putting down. I want to for us to stay in contact because I definitely would like to have you back on in
Oh yeah,
say
most definitely.
6 months or so, where we revisit and we see where you are and how you progress with the music and the music and the podcasting. If you've gotten into the lives and anything like that, we're not done yet. We still got some time. I'm not running you off right now. It's just I definitely want to
Oh
have
yeah.
you on at some point. So future. This question I ask of everybody that I have on the show: where do you see yourself? I'm going to say, you know, we'll go short term right now. Where do you see yourself 2 years down the road between the podcasting and the music?
Self-employed. That's the main goal.
Amen.
That's the primary goal. I want to get into, as far as music's concerned, I want to actually, I have a YouTube channel and my music video is the only thing up there, but I would like to do videos with me on camera. I have some kind of ideas and plans for that. I also wanted to get into Twitch streaming as well. You know, I mean, if I can get a chance to maybe do live at some point, like live in person performances. I mean, I'm not that much of a performer, but I would also like to collaborate more. I've got an artist that I'm probably going to be collaborating with soon, but I like to do more collaborations. The podcast, I want to kind of develop, because my co-host Greg, and prefer not to say, we have been throwing out an idea of doing forming a media company where we do other shows, because we have a bunch of ideas for other shows we want to do. It's just, we have this one and then I have the K Cut, so we're kind of like navigating that, but we also want to like get into other types of media as well. So just overall starting an overarching umbrella for all the media aspects that I do already, and kind of build on that and kind of build something to help other creators have a platform so they can pursue their dreams too.
That's excellent. That is excellent. One of the biggest one of the biggest challenges that everybody faces is how do they keep their stuff relatable and relevant and build something on that. But then at the same time, you're so busy trying to get your stuff. Then this is one of the reasons why I do this show is that I want to bring on people that, hey, you may not have seen this person, but check this person out. You know, you heard it in the theme song, pay attention.
Yeah.
You're looking at now, because in a few years, you'll be like, hey, isn't that guy from such and such? Uh, so it's, we think sometimes we so busy trying to figure out how to make ours successful. Sometimes we don't always think about how do I set this up so not only am I successful, but then I can reach back or I can bring people in under the umbrella while we're setting it up so that when it starts to go, then they come along with us. So
Exactly.
yeah, so and that's a hard, even in these times, that's a hard thing to, if you don't have the revenue, because it's not like I've got millions. It's not like any of us have millions of dollars sitting around. So,
Right.
so it would be a whole lot easier if we had that kind of bankroll. So couple years down the road, okay, we'll take this further. Couple years down the road, you're self-employed. You got the media company going, and you got some things, projects. You got some umbrella projects going underneath that. Where do you take it from there?
Well, one of my ultimate goals is to be a feature filmmaker.
Okay.
So along with the other stuff, that's primarily eventually by around 35 and on, I want to actually explore that space also, because I have a big passion for movies. I've got an entire list of screenplays that I still have to get down and outline and write, and just all these different films that I want to do. And it's just, that's more of, music will always be the first thing I've, kind of really attached to, but film, there's just something about it that it's a medium that you can express in ways that you can't in any other space.
Wow. So we just segued over in the film now. We've gone from music to podcast. Now we're in the film.
I'm
So
a multifaceted individual.
what is it about the film that attracts you? Like that makes you want to do, like, be the next Scorsese, the next Spielberg, the next, or the first boutique Paul, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, and that's actually, I probably actually just use my given name for all my film projects,
Okay.
but it's pretty much just there's something about film that speaks to me. There are so many different layers to a lot of movies that there's infinite interpretations you can make for most things. Like, I'm really into film that's very layered and dense, that you could watch it 10 times and still have something that you can get out of it. And it's also just, I have just, I think, fun stories that I just want to portray on film. It's also something that I could create jobs with it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
personally not a big fan of Tyler Perry's films, but he just opened the biggest film studio in the industry.
Yep.
Like,
But
I see that and it's like, I want to do stuff like that. He bought a decommissioned military base and turned
Fort
it into one of the
McPherson,
biggest
Fort
studios in the
McPherson,
industry.
yes,
You know.
opinion, opinions notwithstanding of Coming to America, the sequel, whether you liked it or you didn't, 6,000 people, I think it was, that he put to work on that one film.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that many.
Yeah, they had to.
You know.
It was a blurb in the credit. I am a huge. I don't think there's a person on the planet. I could be wrong because I'm one of several billion on the planet. I don't think there's a bigger person in Oklahoma City that is a bigger fan of Coming to America than yours truly. So when I saw this sequel was being filmed and then it was coming out, I was like, oh, I couldn't wait for it. And personally, I loved it. A lot of people hated it, but so
I haven't seen it yet.
I watched everything, the credits, because I knew there was going to be a post credit scene, and it said somewhere in the credits that the making of this film allowed us to employ some 6,000, created some 6,000 jobs, and I was like, wow. So I'm not mad at Tyler Perry. I'm not. I'm a little different than you. I am a huge fan of Miss Mabel Simmons. I love the plays more than I do the films. I love the stage plays. Absolutely hilarious because they go off script a lot and they take turns trying to crack each other up. But the one thing that I can say for Tyler Perry is that Tyler Perry has created so much work for so many people. I mean, David and Tamela Mann, if it weren't for Tyler Perry, David and Tamela Mann would still be singing with Kirk Franklin. That was where they were. They started as a member of his gospel choir, the family, with his
Oh,
first
okay.
album. So they would still be singing with Kirk Franklin. And now David and Tamela are, they're touring and doing music and in the church tours and all of that good stuff. He's brought a lot of people up. So I have a lot of respect for that.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah. And then I'm also I've been following a lot of moves that Dame Dash has been making a lot in recent years, because he just started, he's got his own media studio, and just listening to interviews from him, and I realizing that he got a really weird bad rap during the Rockefeller era that should not have existed, because he was literally the only person in the industry who was pro artist and was saying, "Hey, look, these bigwigs at these other companies are trying to take the culture away from us and profit off of it without caring." So seeing all the stuff that he's doing, and he's putting his own money up, not borrowing from anybody. So everything is just his own cash. And it's just like, that's what I want to do too. I don't want to be attached to somebody's, somebody else's bankroll. I want to be able to bankroll everybody else. I got a lot of friends who do a lot of different things, and I want to see all of us come up. And there's a lot of people I've met on the internet through my music stuff that I want to see successful too. And
Everybody eats.
yeah, that's really what it's all about. It's I always say, I started saying this year at the end of my podcast, collaboration breeds community,
It does.
and that is, it's that's the only way to do it. As a community, we can all be successful, and the amount of ways that in all the technology, the possibilities are infinite. There used to be a time where you had to go through several different people to, get your music out. Now you can just, I started a DistroKid account and I can put it up on Spotify in a few weeks.
Yep. Man, I remember those days trying to get a hold of somebody to work. Hey, man, you work at the radio station, right? Can you get this to so and so? Man, let me know. You know, or I don't know in Michigan. I don't know about in Michigan. I know in the DC area, living in Metro DC, there were a couple of radio stations where they did the urban station did a thing called DC Home Jams, and you would send in your stuff, and they would play so many a week. And then there was just a general music, like a kind of a news format. But on Sundays, they had a show called DC Music Rocks, where they also play. But it was a thing where you had to know somebody and getting your music into somebody's hands, or just have those connections. And now all you need is a laptop and a good keyboard or a good workstation and a decent mic, and that's it. I mean, look at Rebecca Black. Look at what Rebecca Black did. Her family threw out a couple of dollars for her to film that video. She hadn't had to work again a day in her life, and that was her biggest hit.
It's actually funny because for the 10-year anniversary, she released a remix of Friday featuring other artists, and it just made me think, like, wow, this is 10 years old, and she's a completely different person than she was back then too. Like, the stuff she's doing now, it's just kind of hard to believe that that's where it got started. But hey, it's like, yeah, putting it on the internet and going viral, now it's like all you have to do is have someone have a TikTok go viral and your song could just blow up.
Right. Man, who are you telling? Man, I think you and I need to start getting with some of these TikTok artists. I haven't gotten into TikTok yet. I can't.
I'm on TikTok, and I saw, it's not like anybody big, but there are a couple people who use my song in a TikTok, and it's
Oh,
like them with their camera like showing what winter was. It was like sometime like a couple weeks after it came out, like someone was like showing like winter in the area, and I think there were a couple people from the state also. I was like, oh, a couple people actually use my song. That's kind of cool.
that's nice. That's nice. Hello, Josh Higgs. Thank you for joining the Indian Unsigned podcast today. You know Josh?
Who?
Somebody named Josh Higgs.
Oh, that is my friend and dedicated listener to Prefer Not to Say. Hey, Josh, thank you for tuning in.
I have to keep conditioning myself to realize that that's the name of your podcast, because every time you go, because you hesitate every time you say that's my guy from, and I prefer not to say it. And I'm, what? Oh, that's the podcast.
Yeah, that's also the fun thing is in conversation. It's like, wait, what do you mean prefer not to say? But no, yeah, Josh Higgs, he is a good friend of Greg's who I became friends with because he listens to our podcast. He actually is someone who hasn't posted recently, but he was posting TikToks and was getting like thousands of views all the time. Yeah, no, he's a very dedicated fan. We are very appreciative of his listenership.
Well, Josh, thank you for joining us today here on the podcast. Man, I tell you, TikTok, I don't know how people have the time, because TikTok is like its own little mini production studio with all the effects and things that you can add and put in the video. Like, I've just gotten to the point where I've got proficient with iMovie, let alone with the TikTok.
Yeah, I attempted a TikTok and it was, yeah, I'm gonna have to like look up some tutorials on that because I've seen people do challenges where they make a video in real time and then show it at the end, and I'm just like, how much practice does this take? Because it's all these quick cuts, and with the way the app works, you can just like hold it, record, and then they do all these different motions. I'm just like, this is just a whole other thing. I'm thinking, back in the day, it was, hard just figuring out computer recording in general. But now you got an app where people are doing basically, they're master filmmakers just on this little app that has all these features.
Oh, speaking of, you know what? You said, speaking of master filmmakers, and this is something that would probably tickle your fancy. There was a video, and I saw it yesterday. They said it took 7 or 8 takes to get right, but they filmed a commercial, a promotion for a bowling alley, and they did it with a drone. and it started with the drone flying in and through the bowl. It flew all over the bowling alley and got clips of everything. And the only thing that they added was audio. The cut that they used, it was a single take cut that they used, but it took them 7 or 8 takes to get. If I can find it, I will get it to you. It is amazing with what we have available at our fingertips now. What we can do, like, Did you see the commercial where the kids did the big snowball fight and they filmed the whole thing with the iPhone 12 or whatever it was? It was a big commercial over
I
the.
don't think so.
I think it was a big commercial over the holidays, not this past year, but the year before. It's like end of 2019 going into 2020. It was this whole ginormous snowball fight. They filmed the whole thing with iPhone 12s, and it looked like it was done by a professional film crew.
Oh
They
well.
filmed it with iPhone 12s and edited it with iMovie.
Oh yeah, there was a couple movies. Famous director Steven Soderbergh, for those who don't know who he is, he did movies like his first one was Sex Lies and Videotape. He did the movie Traffic, Aaron Brockovich, the Ocean's Trilogy. He shot a couple films on an iPhone, like feature films. One of them was on Netflix, and just all on the iPhone.
That's mind blowing, bro.
Yeah, it's crazy all the stuff you can do with just like this simple technology. It's or not, I wouldn't say simple technology. It's the ease of use of a tablet or a phone. Like I remember there was what producer Madlib made a tweet on how he made all the beats for the second Freddie Gibbs album he did, Bandana, their second collaboration. He did them all on an iPad, and the internet lost its mind because you're like, you did all of this on an iPad, which most people don't realize. An iPad is still like more powerful than any tech that came before it. Most people don't realize, like, all the old school samplers were very primitive and actually not very efficient at all.
But people are figuring out ways to make it work.
Yeah, it's just,
So I can. Do you see yourself starting out like that, or you want to get to a point where you got the bankroll to do the whole big production?
I mean, I would like to keep it kind of streamlined. I like a lot of smaller, no budget films, so I'd like to keep things as practical as possible. But I mean, like the camera I'm using for this stream right now it's a professional camera, but it's you know not that much bigger than a phone.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, mine too. If you're talking about the old bag phones from back in the early '90s, that only got reception within 3 blocks of the cellular one, and then you got charged roaming fees outside of that. Wow, man, look, this has been. I've had some folks on, okay, but I've had 6 shows before this, and I've enjoyed talking to each and every one of them. I This is the first interview I've had where I have gone from point A to point B. Then we got off at exit 3, and we took a left turn at Albuquerque. We went to Waco, and you've given me so many different. Like, you are ridiculously multifaceted to the point where it's like you could go in any direction. As a matter of fact, with the music production, you could do the film, and then you could do your own music and save the middleman there. Now, of course, you said you want to help other people eat, but I could see you doing, and just the credits being, directed by James Bond, produced by James Bond, music by James Bond, pre-production by James. Like, I see you just
Well,
having
some
all.
of my films are like that. Like I'm a big fan of was it Robert Rodriguez's film El Mariachi, which was the first in the Mexico trilogy, which it was kind of remade as Desperado. But
Mhm.
the first one, he made it for $7,000. He was the writer, director, producer, cinematographer, and editor, sound designer. He did literally everything himself. And on shooting days, he had maybe one person help him, but he did all this stuff himself. And
That
it ended up getting picked up by Columbia for a wide release.
was a good movie too. I think
Yeah,
yeah,
it's also
I've seen that trilogy. That's Banderas, right?
well the second two are Antonio Banderas. The first one was actually his friend who starred in the first role, but then once they got signed to an agent, and then they did a film deal, he got Antonio Banderas for that film specifically. And he actually, what was it? I think he was the one with Steve Buscemi was in. I think Desperado was one in Steve Buscemi was in. Whichever one he was in, he actually wrote that part specifically for Steve Buscemi, which I think is the funniest thing in the world. That he writes, he'll be like, "Oh, I want this specific person." But yeah, it's like, and I like a lot of filmmakers who just do everything themselves because you don't really need a big crew to make something seem like a bigger production. He made that movie for $7,000. People thought it was made for $70,000, but he just knew what he was doing.
That reminds me, I now have two people I need to hook you up with because the cast of the movie that I just interviewed last week, they could be some good guests for you. It's an indie film called Boxing Day. It's a great movie.
I think I remember you telling me that. I saw that on the page, and I remember when we first spoke, you had talked about that.
Yes, definitely. I think it's something that anyway, that's a different story for a different time. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been watching this, you have definitely I'm honored to say that I know a real life Renaissance man here. I mean, you're a man of many, and I'm pretty sure there's more just beyond the surface of what we talked about in the last 75 minutes. So, Mr. Boutique Paul, James, I appreciate you being on the show, sir. I need you to hang tight with me because we're gonna have to shut it down from here because we're running a little over, and I got another appointment after this, and I don't want to miss it. But I appreciate
no problem.
I appreciate you being on today, ladies and gentlemen. Where's my cursor? There it is. This is I told you I am not on my A game today, but it's okay. Sometimes it makes for some really great comedic outtakes. We appreciate you tuning in to this week's edition of Indie and Unsigned. As always, don't forget to, if you're watching on YouTube, to like, subscribe, share, save. I just found out about that today. So make sure you check that out. Tell everybody about this show. We will be back next week. I'll be putting out the promo for who my guest is then. But until then, this has been Mr. Fingers on behalf of myself and James, a.k.a. Boutique Paul. We're going to sign